Okay, so the motivational enhancement therapy also featured this thing that they call recapitulation, and that's really, once you have a change plan in place, all the arguments for change have been revealed and factored in. The really important and powerful intrinsic motivators have been identified and leveraged to the extent possible. The client has had an active role in crafting the change plan, and it makes sense to them. They believe it's doable. Their role is identified. Your role as a practitioner, if you're to be involved, is identified. The role of significant others is to be identified. All recovery capital, all recovery assets in that person's life, network of support, community, have been identified and deployed in support of that person's plan. And this is just a grand summary, if you will, that identifies and pulls all that stuff together for the purposes of reinforcement, for the purposes of talking up your person in terms of encouragement. That can be a powerful kind of summary to be able to offer to somebody that's very validating of all the work they've done, all the things they got going for them, all the resources and tools in their recovery toolbox that are being deployed in the service of their recovery. Can be a very powerful way to kind of wrap that up and launch that person in a really good direction with a lot of power. And of course, you want to close the deal in terms of asking for a firm, explicit commitment to what that change plan represents. And some version of the question, are you ready to make a commitment to this plan? Or are you ready, is this the good time for you to commit to the changes this is going to require of you? And if you've done all that preliminary work of, engaging and focusing and evoking, and you've built that good rapport and the person knows they can be honest with you, then the chances are you'll get an honest answer to that question. And if the answer is no, then you back up, right? You re-engage at whatever point the process the person needs to be re-engaged with, and you take it from there. But if the answer is yes, you actually have a treatment plan that the person is fully bought into and is a much higher likelihood of them being able to follow through on and succeed with than if you arrived at a treatment plan in some other kind of more, prematurely quick or standardized sort of way. Phase 2 in motivational enhancement therapy also involves getting a significant other in that person's life to come in and participate. And this it serves a couple of purposes. One is that is another recovery resource potentially for your person. And the more educated the people in your client's inner circle are about how to support their loved one in the service of their recovery and at least not get in the way of that person's recovery, the more likely it is that the person's going to succeed. They spend a limited amount of time with you, right? 1 or 2 hours a week in outpatient level of care, maybe 9 hours a week in intensive outpatient, but there's 168 hours in a week. So where and with whom your client spends the majority of their time, it matters. And anytime we can help generalize the treatment to the person's circle of support is worth doing, and this gives us one opportunity to do that. The other benefit of having family members or friends involved is that we can do some coaching or teaching or whatever on avoiding enabling or codependent kind of behavior that would be not useful for your client. So we want to, establish a connection. If the loved one knows that you're a resource for their loved one and they can call on you, for whatever purposes that makes sense, so be it. We want to educate and raise awareness in the ways that I've already said, strengthen the commitment. If that person can agree together with their loved one that, hey, this is worth pursuing and I got your back and I'm going to be helping you in whatever way I can. It validates the importance. If the loved one is saying, yeah, I support you, this is really important, that can help answer some of the doubts or ambivalence that might creep back up in your client, and certainly improve the nature of their relationship, whatever it may be. So It's not always the case where your client will want a significant other person in the session or in the room, and that's understandable. Some relationships get strained, some are not able to be easily repaired, and you need to respect that in order to help your client with where they're at. So, but if you're trying to sell the idea of involving a significant other, these are some things worth sharing perspective-wise with your client, that their significant other cares about them and will be impacted by the changes that they make. And doesn't it make sense that they would want to be prepared and equipped for that? That their contributions, the input of their significant other is valuable, right? They know that person to whatever extent they have an objective, in some cases a more objective perspective on that person and what they're into than the person may have themselves. Identifying a significant other as a resource, as part of a recovery asset, and then certainly helping that person's own health and well-being by becoming more educated about what's going on in early recovery can help position them to be better off themselves, as well as to be better positioned to help their loved one who's your client. So significant others play a part in building commitment. This is kind of at least a little bit of what can happen in an intervention, a group intervention, right? That you see some on TV, although that's an interesting kind of version of things, but used to be more prevalent 20, 30 years ago. But basically bringing loved ones together around the client who's, in some level of high ambivalence, and having that client hear from their loved ones all the ways in which that person's use has hurt them, has caused them concern about the client. This is like a mini version of that. If you have the significant other in the session doing motivational enhancement therapy, it does allow for a limited amount of that kind of disclosure that can help connect dots for the client with regard to their own ambivalence and kind of raise the importance of their recovery efforts, because they realize that their active addiction has been hurtful or distressing in whatever sorts of ways that can be expressed in this sort of interaction. So that's kind of the mini intervention dynamic that's talked about on this slide. So when there is a significant other in the session, you want to elicit their feedback and their support. You want to hear, similarly as you worked on with your client, you want to hear change talk in the direction of supporting what's going on. And you want to make sure expectations on the part of the significant other are tempered and grounded in reality. And that's another benefit that you can bring as a motivational enhancement therapist. The 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the chronic relapsing condition aspect of addiction, the only wasted relapse is one you don't learn from. You want to help inoculate the significant other against potential slips or kind of regressions, so that ends up not being a deal breaker for their support of their loved one, for example. And then certainly anticipating damage control situations and damage control strategies. If a significant other does start behaving in a judgmental or enabling or codependent manner, what kind of boundaries can you agree on while you're all there in a good place that would be acceptable in a moment like that for your client to be able to set, whether it's leaving or asking that the conversation end and be picked up later. Those are some examples of what can happen that can be useful in equipping the significant other. And then lastly, phase 3 of motivational enhancement therapy has to do with follow-through strategies. And it really has to do with these 3 things: reviewing progress, renewing motivation if it wanes, and then redoing commitments if that needs to happen. So reviewing progress, how's it going? What happened since the last session in the motivational enhancement therapy 4-session sequence? What happened since the last section? How's it going, right? Has the action plan been working well, or does it need to be tweaked? Renewing motivation. Maybe somebody has, experienced some challenges and their motivation has gone down and their ambivalence has gone up. Okay, we have all those tools and techniques still available to us to help renew and build up that person's motivation. And then redoing the commitment if it needs to be redone. If there's some issues that have erupted or relapses happened or parts of the treatment plan or the action plan, recovery plan that needs to be renegotiated or strengthened, then we do that and we revisit all those core intrinsic motivating factors and we get them as strong as possible in order to help power that person moving forward with a new and improved or newly adjusted, newly renegotiated commitment plan or commitment to their treatment plan, while all the while emphasizing their autonomy and empowerment and their choice. They're the driver of their recovery bus. So a couple of distinctives for motivational enhancement therapy. It really is more about emphasizing personal choice rather than a disease model like a 12-step approach would take. It de-emphasizes any kind of diagnostic labeling as prerequisite for changing behavior, which we've talked about that. It views resistance as a state of the relationship between practitioner and client rather than a trait. And it gives us tools and a perspective with which to respond to resistance with reflection rather than getting sucked into an argument or some kind of a conflict or the righting reflex where we feel like we have to correct the person rather than just rolling with their resistance if and when it was to occur. Motivational enhancement therapy has the advantage over the other approaches in that it does not assume action stage readiness to change. Rather, it assumes that people up against an area of difficult behavior change, which addiction is certainly one, are going to be ambivalent and are going to be less than action stage to begin with. And engaging with somebody with that perspective and in that place and being aware of and respecting their pace is going to lead to a better outcome than trying other types of intervention that are more action stage oriented. So we're going to end with this slide. In your motivational enhancement therapy manual, there's an excellent bibliography in the back that has a lot of good references to tools, as well as the appendices there that have the handouts and whatnot that are used in the therapy. Whether you use those in a formal motivational enhancement therapy sequence or use them less formally in whatever other counseling that you do, I think they have value in both ways. And integratedrecovery.org is one of the places where you can find a PDF free copy of the Motivational Enhancement Therapy Manual. And if you Google Motivational Enhancement Therapy Manual, it'll probably get you to the place where you can order a hard copy if you want. And again, those are $6. It's basically just to cover the cost of the copying of it. So I would commend that to you very highly and wish you well in your application of motivational interviewing techniques and in your deployment of motivational enhancement therapy with the clients that you serve. Thank you.